I flew out the end of February to go and get my car from the farm and bring it back to the UK, and had to stay for a week. And while I was there, I ran into these little guys. Really cute, especially if kids, nice long line of caterpillars. Can be very tempting to pick them up and try and play with them or touch them, which is something you definitely don't want to do. These are processionary caterpillars. They actually build a tent at the top of pine trees and cedar trees, and any time between sort of mid to late January to mid-late February, they'll march themselves down the tree in a nice long line and try and find somewhere to turn into a pupa and develop into a moth. Problem with them is they have got very nasty stinging hairs. Actually, the hairs don't sting, they're irritating hairs. If you get them into your skin, they can cause a nasty rash, and if you have an allergic reaction to them, you can have very serious problems. Pets especially, if your dog was to sort of sniff at them, inhale a couple of hairs, that could be life-threatening for a dog. Quite often dogs actually have to have their tongues amputated because they'll get a hair or two in their tongue and it causes necrosis. So the dog ends up having its tongue amputated. But I certainly didn't want them finding somewhere to turn into butterflies and then repeat the process tenfold next year. So very, very carefully, I put a tin in front of the lead caterpillar and just let him walk down in, and most of the others followed him. After that, it was very, very careful, just with a small stick, just flicking them into it, and disposed of them later carefully. If they get agitated, they will sort of vibrate themselves and let more hairs sort of float into the air, which means you're more at risk of breathing in the hairs. I'm being very, very careful. I'm just moving a couple of leaves so I can get a closer look, and I'm doing that as carefully as I can so as not to agitate them. Now, this line of caterpillars was about 8 to 10 feet long. A couple of colonies of them can rip a pine tree to shreds. They build a tent at the top of a tree and they camp out in there until spring. They normally live up in a tent during the day, and at night they'll march out in single file, eat the pine needles, and then retreat back to their tent in the morning. You can often find several tents in a single tree. They're native to the southern Mediterranean area, Spain, up into Portugal. They've been spreading up through Europe since the 1990s. They reckon it's assisted by climate change and commercial activities. They're even found as far north as Paris now. There's going to be as many as up to 300 caterpillars in one train. Once they form these trains, they're actually looking for some soft earth in which to bury themselves and form cocoons and turn into moths. It is advised, if you do find them in your trees, that you actually get a professional to come out and remove them before they get to the caterpillar procession stage. Not advised to do it yourself. Once you start moving the tent, any loose hairs are going to float into the atmosphere. So call a professional to get rid of them.